try this again. We've got our first test coming up after this lab, so you need to make sure you understand how to do this. Start a new project, set it to console, and get your first few lines written. Make sure you can do that off your head. Okay, anything from Monday that you want me to go over again, or from anything? We understand the concept of a variable. We understand how math works. We understand how relational operators work. We understand that something like this can be evaluated to true or false. True or false is what? Well, what is true?
One, any number that's not zero.
Anything non-zero. And false, of course, is zero. We have the basic for loop. When do you use a for loop?
When you know exactly how many times you want.
When you know exactly how many times you want it to run, you can use a for loop. You set it up normally structured like this, and this being the number of times you want the loop to run. This does not have to be there. This can be any code that you want. It can even be other loops. Actually, we'll do an exercise with that in a little bit. You can do a loop inside of a loop. But if you're going to do that, you can't use I, you have to use something else. So you call this a nested loop. How many times does the first loop run? How many times does the I loop run? 7. And how many times does the J loop run? 70 times? Let's find out. Let's make a counter. We'll start it at 0, and inside the J loop we'll say cout counter plus plus inline. So every time the J loop runs, the counter goes up and displays the result. I think it was right. It is 70. 70, right? Because it runs 10 times on the first go around, and then I loops, right? I becomes a 1, and then this guy runs 10 times. I becomes a 2, and this guy runs 10 times, and so you end up with a total of 70 executions of whatever is in the J loop. If I move the inline down here, it kind of shows you a little bit better of what's going on. And we can even put a space. Or you can put a tab in there. So this is when I was 0. It ran through the J and did all of these. And then I became 1. It ran through the J loop and the counter keeps going up. And so we get a total of 70 executions of that C out statement. And you can put more and more loops in there if you wanted to. You could have a K loop or a Z loop. And you can nest these loops as many times as you want, but the number of executions go up exponentially. But there is plenty of application for nesting loops inside of other loops. What other two loops did we talk about?
While loop.
So while loop. We use this whenever what? You don't know how many times. If I wanted to toss the 0, I can put the plus plus on the front and it'll start at 1. And so we don't know when it stops. It never does actually, but this condition here, if this condition is false, the loop will stop. So we could say if the counter, if I wanted to stop after 100, what would I put here?
Counter equals 100, so 100.
Like that?
Less than equal to.
While counter is
That's kind of like
equal to 100, this would be false initially, because 0 is not 100. Actually, I still have a problem. Oh, what's wrong with this? I made an error here. How many times will this actually run? No, quite the opposite. It's going to run forever. What's up with that? Why is it running forever? Why was it the same value every time? Did anybody see my error?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I was assigning 100, and then I bumped it up one, so it just said 101. Now this would stop anytime counter is not 100, or is 100. No, yes. Counter equals 100, that's a true statement, the loop will run. But counter starts at 0, so 0 is not 100, the loop would not run. That runs 0 times. All right, somebody already said what we need to do here is less than or equal to 100. 0 is less than 100, so that's true, and it will go up until it hits 100. And then it will go one more time. We should get a 101, and we're done. So there's a while loop. Any questions on that? Anything about that is confusing to you? And then the last loop, the do loop. And what was significant about the do loop? It always runs at least once. It can run infinitely, but it will always run at least once. Even if the condition is false. I'm going to go back to the counter here. And we talked about if statement, right? If statement's going to evaluate a condition for true or false. What could I put in this if statement that would make the loop end? If the counter equals 100, do something to end the loop. What can we do? We can break the loop, right? What was the other word that went with break? Oh yeah, that was one we used, but that wasn't the one I was looking for. There was continue. What does continue do? Restarts it. So this loop would just run forever. You can nest your ifs inside of loops, and I could put more loops in here if I wanted to. You know, that's just a little loop that does nothing infinite number of times. But there is no limit as to how many times you can nest loops and if statements inside of each other. Get rid of counter here. We talked about having a menu system. You could do like order, return, reports, exit. This would display a menu, and if we want to get input from the user on working with this menu, what do we need to do? If I want them to be able to enter a number from the menu, what do I need? CN. What? I gotta have a variable to store the information, right? You guys awake? Then I can use the number, I can use the input to do different things in the program. I can say if they did enter a 1, do this part of the program. We keep it simple just by writing a cout statement, but you could write any code in here you wanted to. And I could write an if statement for each one of these guys. I'm just going to write something in here to show that it works, and then I'm going to show you a different way of doing this using a switch statement. If num equals 4, exit. How did we exit? Exit 0 or return 0. Either one of those will kill the program. Return 0 will not always kill the program. It will kill it from main. Up here, the main function tells the system it returns some integer, and if we return 0, that will end the program. And then if I want this menu to run over and over again, I can wrap all of this up in a loop. So true. Down here I put closing brace on that loop, and now all of this runs in one big loop. Make sense? Maybe? Let's try it out. If I put a 1, I get orders, place your order. 2, enter the return. 3, reports. 4, exit. Where at?
Just right there. That's good. I don't know why. Third moment trying to find something real quick. I don't know. But basically, that's what we are. If you're a logical thinker and you like math, those type of things, that's kind of what that's doing. Because even though you don't have to do a whole lot of math, everything that we do with the logical thinking.
We're good? Mm-hmm. All right. So this is a little bit tedious. I'm writing a whole lot of if statements here, and if I had a bigger menu, that might get, it works just fine, but there's another way of doing it using something called a switch. So I'm going to scrap the if statements here. I'm going to leave the couts, but I'm going to scrap the ifs and show you a different way of doing this. You can set up something called a switch. And switch gets a condition. It's not really a condition, it's an evaluation, an open brace, and then a closing brace at the bottom. And switch is going to look at something. Since we're getting our input as num, we can put num in there, and it will look at num, and then we provide a case for each option. So case is a keyword, and I can put case 1, and you follow that with a colon. And at the end of each case, you write a break statement. So there's case 1, here's case 2, don't need a break statement because the return 0 is going to kill the program. You can also provide a default case. So like if they don't enter a 1, 2, 3, or 4, we can have a default. Default doesn't get the word case, you just write default, and then you could do something like you could write your default message there, and that covers anything that is not covered by one of these cases. These cases have to be an integer, but they don't have to be in order. I could put 2 first if I wanted to. You can skip numbers. So if I wanted to make my next case 99, maybe that's a secret code for my program. I enter a 99 there, it will do something. I can skip all the others and just have case 99. That works just fine. But it does have to be an integer. So let's just verify that this works. 1, 2, 3, 4. That works just fine. Just like it did when I had it with if statements. But sometimes this is just a little more intuitive. Also the default case, if I want to put a 9 in here, some number that isn't one of the cases, it will just say, please make that valid selection. It hits the default case. Any questions on switch? So what do we need to run a switch? We need an integer, we need a switch statement, and then we just need some cases to handle whatever that integer is. And then I'll go ahead and change this up because you can kind of cheat the system a little bit. If you wanted to use letters, you can use letters because letters are ultimately numbers, right? Is everyone familiar with the Ascii table? Is anyone familiar with the Ascii table?
Yes.
You don't memorize the Ascii table in your spare time?
Usually when I say most of them memorize, I go to a different computer and it's wrong or something. Your operating system is different.
Well, that didn't work out very well. You've got some number, some decimal number, look on the DEC here. 65 is capital A. Every character has a number attached to it, and the computer only really understands numbers. So we can use this to our advantage if we wanted to. I'm going to change this up here just for aesthetics, but you don't have to change this part. Obviously it doesn't care what you wrote in the cout statement. But I can have, instead of case 1, I can have a case A. It is case sensitive. So if I put capital A here, in order for this menu to work, it will have to be a capital A.
Should it be lowercase?
You can do lowercase.
No, I mean like, never mind.
And these are chars, so they all go in single quotes. Let's see if that works. If I put in an A, I didn't like that at all. I didn't like that because I'm still running an integer here. Num is still classed as an integer, so that didn't work. But if I make it a char for the characters, then this should work. Now I'll put in capital A, works just fine. B, C, D. So if you wanted to use letters, you can do it this way because these are ultimately just numbers. And I said A was 65, right? 66, 67, so on. That's what it really is. So now I can still put in a capital A and it works because it's reading it as a number. Questions on the switch? Questions on running a switch with char instead of num, integers?
And this was local variable x used.
What's that?
Uninitialized local variable. I got an error.
You have an error. All right, let me look at it. I think that's about it. I think I should probably go over the if-else again, since that seemed a little bit hazy to some people. I'll get rid of the switch and rewrite this as if-else. We said we could have an if statement, and we could run it. We'll just make it A. No, if num is A, do this thing. And then we could put an else that handles anything other than num equaling A. In other words, if this statement is false, this statement will run, and vice versa. But you'll always get one or the other. So put something there like that to show that I don't think it likes this closing brace. Yeah, because I lost my switch. Anyways, if I push A, it should go A, and then it says all those other cout statements, but if I push G, I lost my loop. If I put in something like G, you did not enter A, so it runs the else instead of the if. It'll always do one or the other. But what if we want to make, like we just did, we want to make that menu and we want to have the else cover our default statement. So what you can do is just say else if. We'll leave that for default. We can say else if, and this will handle the case for B, and we can chain these else ifs together as long as we want to. There's a C and there's a D. And then for the very last one, if I want my default case to run, I'll just write else. And now this is the same as it was before. Almost. Maybe. What did I do wrong? Here we go. A works, B works, C works. I don't want to exit. I'm going to put in something that's invalid, R. Please make a valid selection from the menu. So that's how you would write a switch just using if-else. It's important to note that once any of these ifs catch, like if I do put an A, it does not evaluate any of the others. It does not even look at these, it skips them all. So this is a little more efficient than just writing an if for every single possibility. Any questions on that? All right. That is it for the lecture. Oh, we need to show how to turn this in. How do I turn this in? What I like to do is right click on the project and then open folder in File Explorer. This is going to take you to wherever your project is. The first thing we need to do is click on View and Reveal Hidden Items. That's going to open up the .vs folder. You can wade through that until you see this IPCH folder. You want to delete that. You can't do it with the project open. And you want to delete this database file. You can look at the size here. This is enormous. And that's why we delete that. It's just really bloated. And then you back up and you can delete the debug folder as well.
Okay, I have a question about this.
Yes, ma'am.
So I was trying to help Jenny with this, and when we were in the library, we were going through the files and trying to find like the pseudo file and everything, and it only like showed up, I don't remember, I think it was IPCH file or something like that. So what should we do in a situation in case like the files don't show up?
If they're not showing up, they're not there. You turned on the hidden one, right? You click on View, you have hidden items revealed.
Yeah, we were in the VS file and everything. It's just like the pseudo file wasn't there. It was just one little.
This is at the library here?
Yeah.
And the issue is that our SUO file is not titled on the right, and it's followed by SUO, it's misstated, and it doesn't have a title. It's not titled by SUO.
Are they running Visual Studio 2017 or do they still have 15?
It's 2017.
2017, yeah.
I wonder if they have like the community version or something like that on there.
I'm originally had the community version installed on my computer, but I uninstalled it and reinstalled the one you've given. That might be one kind of my issue. I don't know.
I don't know, I've never heard of that. The important thing is that it's not there. These files are enormous if you don't go in and clean them up. It's just because Microsoft is really sloppy with this stuff. But you want to delete the database files, and you're looking at the size. If I Control Z this, I go back out and look at this project. The size is 34 megs for this tiny little program. 34 megabytes for all of that. The idea is to reduce the size of it. If I go into the VS, you can see I've got this big database file here. This can go. And the IPCH folder, 28 megs of garbage. That's what you're trying to get rid of. You're just trying to get rid of the big stuff. Anything that's not, a few kilobytes needs to go. And then the debug folder will also usually be, it's 1 megabyte. It's not huge. You're going to have trouble emailing anything with the debug folder because there's an executable in there and it looks like a virus. And it could potentially be a virus because it's just us writing whatever we want. So you delete the debug as well. Now that we've got your source file, your main file here is the most important, but you want the entire project besides those files I just told you to delete. So after that, you're going to go back out where your project is, send to compressed zip folder. And And then this file will be on the order of about 7 kilobytes. You can turn that in real easy. It's lightweight. All of the information that we deleted is immediately restored when you open this back up. And then you'll turn that in. Don't turn in a shortcut. I don't know where the shortcut comes from. I know it happens occasionally, but this is the one you want. You want the real zip file here. Should be about 7 to 10 kilobytes.
What is your file? What? Oh, I didn't see it. It is. My file is up there. Maybe that's what it was.
Any other questions?